Because here's the bottom line, and I would write this one down. Hard work with the wrong philosophy still equals bankruptcy, still equals poverty. You know, I hear the word generational wealth as they kind of introduce me, and I hear about like what the 1% do, and yet I think back, because David and I were in Italy this summer together. I invited him out to our villa when we were there for a few months, and the reason I went there was to reconnect with my roots. See, my great-grandfather left Italy in 1913, which is an interesting year to choose to leave, because the reason he left is because he was being taxed so heavily by the Italian government and the mob because he lived in San Giovanni. And when he left, he had to leave his wife, who was pregnant with their first child, and then he got on a ship. He had mazzasoli, which is honey bread, so that it wouldn't spoil. Not sure he had enough food to make it all the way to the United States in the name of making a better life and being the catalyst for the legacy that I'm now responsible for in my own family. Once he got here, they didn't even understand him because he didn't speak English, and they changed his name when he went through Ellis Island. So his last name was Iaquinta, now it's Iquinto all of a sudden because he shows up. He gets on a train, he takes that train all the way to a small town in Utah called East Carbon, where he becomes a goat herder, lives in a freaking tent just to save up enough money to hopefully send some home for them to be able to live, and at the same time hopefully be able to buy a home and then bring them over to live with him again. That was a 7-year process before he saw his daughter, who was almost 7 years old, and before he saw his wife again. And then he became a coal miner. I'm from a coal mining town where my grandfathers and even my father were coal miners. I decided to mine something other than coal. I decided to mine wealth. And what I mean by mining wealth is coal's a pretty dirty energy, but each one of you have your own energy that is very clean, and I call that a soul purpose, S-O-U-L. It's your values, it's your abilities, it's your passion, it's your purpose, it's the best container of who you are. And when I heard the investment panel, even in the world of investing, we can talk about a concept like that. Because in investing, when you heard, hey, if you had $1 million, what would you do with it? And the answer should be different for everyone because they were discussing something called investor DNA. Investor DNA is, what is it when you look at your own core values and your own core competencies and what really drives you, and then focus instead of diversify. See, the ultra wealthy, they're not overly diversified. They might diversify when they have so much wealth, they need to find places to put it, but to get there, it was a game of focus. Andrew Carnegie said he put all of his eggs in one basket and watched it like a hawk. So, see, my great-grandfather didn't have a lot of wealth to manage necessarily, but he did something that was kind of a gift for my family, because I realized the reason he had to leave his family for 7 years, because he didn't understand what I'm going to teach you today. That's why it's so important to me to make sure to get this message out there, because he didn't have the team, he didn't have the insight, because here's the bottom line, and I would write this one down. Hard work with the wrong philosophy still equals bankruptcy, still equals poverty. If hard work equaled wealth, these damn coal miners would be the richest people we know. But when you think coal miners in West Virginia or Price, Utah, we don't think about a lot of wealth. We might think about black lung, you might think about death, you might think about a shitty life, which it really was. So it's really important that we build out the proper framework and that we abolish kind of this, I don't know, failed financial experiment in the world of retirement planning. Like, first, can we just retire that concept of retirement? Like, that's a bad notion. The icons that we all look up to, that we respect, that we admire, it's not because they retired. They could have retired long ago. But once they had even more money, they used that to fuel even more purpose. And if your purpose is greater than your problems, if your purpose is greater than the current financial circumstance, then you're going to earn and create a lot more wealth, because wealth is a game of value creation. And dollars follow value. So, what I want to make sure that we do is, first of all, build out a framework that if you leverage, you can achieve economic independence somewhere between 3 years and 7 years. 3 years if you're already on a pretty good track, and 7 years if you're addicted to lifestyle and probably have a bunch of money that you need to pay back to someone, all right? So the good news is this isn't some 30-year trajectory where you set money aside and you budget because budgeting sucks, or where you scrimp or save or pinch pennies till you get blisters on your fingers, because that's not the road to wealth. Yet if we read most financial books, that's what they want you to believe. That if you just hand your money over to other financial experts, that one day, someday, compound interest is going to kick in, and then you're going to have a bunch of money. That hasn't worked. Somewhere between 91% or 98%, depending on which statistics and which studies you look at, show that Americans are not economically independent when they're age 65. And this is what economic independence is. It's when you have enough recurring revenue to cover your basic expenses of life. That recurring revenue can come from one of two main places. One, investment income. I loved hearing the panel talk about cash flow investing. Investing isn't about waiting for 30 years. That's not investing, that's speculating. That's shirking and abdicating responsibility. That's taking on high risk. And anyone that's told you that high risk equals high return is selling you something that's not good for you. If high risk equaled high return, wouldn't we buy lottery tickets and all get really wealthy? But let's face it, lottery tickets are a tax on the poor. That's how governments raise funds, by having people believe they're somehow going to get something for nothing, which is a disease of the mind. And look, there's this kind of scarcity mentality that happens with a lot of people in the world, and scarcity is the greatest destroyer of wealth. No amount of luck, saving, discipline, rate of return, or financial advisor will save you if you're in a scarcity mentality, because it's kind of this disease called the consumer condition. The consumer condition is where people look to take more from the world than they bring to it. You've seen it. It's called the entitlement mentality. You've seen it. It's when people operate out of fear, doubt, or worry, and they are no fun to be around because they absolutely suck the marrow out of life and never give another piece of it back. On the other hand, I believe that there's a producer paradigm. That producer paradigm is where we create more value in the world than we take from it. It's one where we believe that even if there's a finite amount of resources, there's innovation, there's ingenuity, there's value creation, there's service, there's solving problems. And the bigger the problems in the world, the bigger the payoffs that are available out there for people to actually make more money. I mean, there's never been more money in the economy than there is right now at this second that I'm speaking. So it's not that it's scarce, it's that the knowledge of how to earn it and sustainably keep it and grow it is scarce. So we begin with investment income being part of that economic independence. The second type of income is entrepreneurial income. Entrepreneurial income isn't the income when you're actually the technician doing the work and getting paid for that. Entrepreneurial income is when you have the infrastructure and organization that, with some maintenance and monitoring it and a degree of management, continues to pay every single week or every single month, even if you're not there every single moment, right? So first of all, there's kind of this myth. There is nothing that's a complete passive income in the world. There's just things that are more passive or less passive. If you think that there's complete passive income, you're going to watch that just pass you by when other people make money. There's maybe short stints of it. There's maybe some money that comes in the mailbox. If you want that to continue for extended periods of time, then it takes some management and some responsibility and stewardship. So economic independence, this is a game changer, because most people are being taught that if they could just save 10% of their income and then put it into some market and try to earn 10% over 30 years, because that's what the stock market has averaged since 2000 BC. Not really, but I mean, that's what they say, right? And averages are all a bunch, it's like a lie. Like if I had two shower heads this morning and I turned one freezing cold and the other one scalding hot and stand in the middle, on average, I'm at a cool temperature, but in reality, I'm miserable as hell, right? So we have to be really careful with averages. I mean, if you earn 10%, or if you lose 10% on $100,000, you're down to $90,000. Then if CNBC, which I got kicked off of, apparently you can't go on CNBC and tell people not to put money in the stock market. They just cut to commercial and then the feed goes dead. And I'm like, hello? Hello? And there was never any email. So I don't know, I'm not gonna, if they watched any video, they might have known who they were getting on. They're like, oh, here's our financial expert, Garrett Gunderson. What should people do right now? I'm like, they should get, and this was in 2008. I'm like, they should stop investing in the stock market. And then they show the commercial, people frolicking on the beach and drinking Corona while the market goes up, and then it was actually spiraling down at the time. But see, none of that's a sustainable model. This whole notion that compound interest is a miracle, the only miracle of compound interest is that we've bought into it, because the institutions are the ones that have been made rich on compound interest. And I know this may be challenging certain beliefs out there, but let's think about it. How long does it take for compound interest to truly kick in and do something for you? It's a 30-year plan. That's pretty damn far away. And then I've even heard quotes, and just raise your hand if you've heard this quote, that Einstein said it was the eighth wonder of the world. Anyone heard that? Yeah, that's a complete lie. We researched it. We got these two guys, Tom and Steven. They did the research, and he was actually in Austria in this conference where he said compounding numbers was the eighth wonder of the world, and then Security National Life in 1927 of all times said that compound interest was the eighth wonder of the world and misquoted Einstein while people got their ass kicked in this little thing called the Great Depression. Right? So I'm here to make sure that we get past the myths and misinformation, because those are the landmines that absolutely harm and destroy legacy. And if there's anything that I'm passionate about, because I'm not actually yelling at you, it may sound like it. I'm just excited. Nobody's in trouble or anything right now that I know of. David, if he's off clean, the rest of you guys are fine. But it's legacy is what I'm passionate about. Because when I think about what my great-grandfather did, and what that meant, he didn't really get to have a great life as a coal miner, but he gave an opportunity for me to have a great life. And now I gotta make sure that I don't raise entitled little brats with my kids. It's a totally different thing. Like when we're in Italy, we're going to Verona and Venice, and we're going to Florence, and we're going to Siena, and we're eating and drinking all the best foods and seeing the best places. My family never experienced that, and you wanna know why? Because they were unfairly taxed, and they unfortunately didn't have the right insight and information to do the best things with their finances. So you could be so skilled, you could be so well-intentioned, you could be so loving, you could be an amazing person, but if you don't get your money handled, life is going to be difficult. So I'm gonna give you a very clear-cut strategy and framework that's predictable, it's sustainable, it's distilled, and you can leverage it, and if you do, you will become economically independent, not 30 years from now, but within 7 years. Anybody okay with that? All right, cool. I'm in the right room for 6 of you. That's awesome. No, okay, cool. Yes, I'm pandering, it's fine. See, this whole notion of saving 10% to try to get 10% is a slow, dangerous road. So here's the different framework. Let's get you to a point where 100% of your lifestyle expenses are handled by investment and entrepreneurial income. And when that happens, every single dollar that you actively earn can give you the biggest insider advantage, because you can build more assets at 10 times the rate as the person who's scrimping and saving, that actually gets into a mindset of scarcity. And unfortunately, that hard work is completely destroyed because of one thing: you don't shrink your way to wealth. The reductionist thinking that has permeated people's minds in the world of finance and been propagated by financial institutions has absolutely destroyed people's wealth, to the point where they're being taught that high risk equals high return, like I talked about before, or that it takes money to make money, as I talked about before, or all these kind of notions that are damaging, and they get people to be so debilitated that they don't take action anymore. So, first off, before you save a single cent, or try to wait for 30 years, let's go through this framework and begin with the very first lever. And I'm using the word lever because this creates leverage in the framework. It's not leveraging money and putting yourself at risk. I'm talking about leveraging knowledge. I'm talking about leveraging ideas and relationships in a way that produce better and more consistent results. And the first lever to economic independence is to boost your profits. Or, let me say that really simply, keep more of every dollar you make. So have you ever heard the statement or sentiment, live within your means? Anyone heard that? Who would have been so inspired if they're like, here comes Garrett Gunderson, who is going to tell you how to live within your means? Who would have just been like, oh, hell yeah, I need to make it back early to hear about how I need to live a shitty life so that I can have a bunch of money when I am too old to spend it with my artificial hip? Yeah, that's like the main notion out there. Like, and look, that was one of the early books I read, was The Millionaire Next Door. Anyone read The Millionaire Next Door? Spoiler alert and earmuffs if you don't want to know the ending of that book, but I'm going to save you some time. The Millionaire Next Door, it's Christmas season, so it's a lot like the first half of A Christmas Carol. If you will be a miserable miser, you too can be a broke millionaire that no one likes because you don't turn on the air conditioner in the summer, because that's going to save you some money. Oh yeah, you know people like this, right? Like I remember my buddy Marcus, like he lives in Vegas, and we used to be buddies. We're not really buddies anymore because I would go to Vegas and he's like, dude, I'll pick you up at the airport. I'm like, sweet. And then he would roll up and like his hubcap would like roll across the street with like the antenna that was a hanger from his closet, you know? No air conditioner. Have you ever been into Vegas with no air conditioning? It was an experience where I'd roll down the window and it felt like there was a blow dryer blowing in my face. So then I'd roll the window up and it felt like I was in an infrared sauna that had been on too long and I just wanted to punch him in the throat. And then we get to his house and I'm thinking, oh God, finally some relief. And his thermostat was at 86. And I was like, bro, if I pay you $5, could we get that all the way down like 79 or something? That'll feel like Antarctica, right? But that's those people that think that wealth is about what you can stop and reduce and not do. And you read the books and it's all about that. And what those books miss out is on, first of all, the magic to wealth is being a freaking entrepreneur. It gives you the biggest advantage that's out there because you're in charge of your value creation. Because as you create more value, you can get paid more money. And as you serve more people or impact them more deeply or reach more people or solve major problems, there could be a windfall of cash that comes in if we're actually capitalistic.